because they can give you great context. If you're like, how does this happen or how does this happen? You've got people that sub in the room as well that can give you great knowledge about that. So, and volunteer. I am going to give you, and not to make you feel old, these very tiny handouts. It's going to be on our website so you get the whole PowerPoint. But for some of you, I know you like to kind of follow along, so I wanted to give you the whole thing. You want to help me? And then I'm also going to hand out, we won't talk about this until a little bit later, but I'll go ahead and let you see it and look through it. These are some communication hints that we'll also be sharing. This is the most important paper that you need tonight. In order for you to show up on the volunteer substitute list, you have to fill this out before you leave tonight and turn it in. There is a quiz on here about the questions. Some of you might feel like you already know the answers to that, so you would have filled out and then pass the board around to another person so that they can use it. And right off of this, we'll pass the pencils around too. But unless we get this back from you, we can't put you on the list. And even if you're here tonight. So I encourage you to turn it in either way. I'd ask you to really think about it. Says, I'm interested in. It gives you a place to check being a studio assistant or a sub. We really hope that many of you will choose to do that too. Many of the families that do that consistently feel like it brings them great knowledge about the philosophy. So how many of you are thinking about being subs?
Put those hands up.
Keep going. So I know some of you work and I get that, but we really encourage, even if you only do it a couple times a month. And then it says volunteer in the studio and or support going out trips. And then it says I'm available what days. And so most of the time we use this for subs, the information, but please be specific. And I thought there was a place. So if you want any specific information, like you only feel comfortable subbing the teens, that's where most people like to sub anyway, teens. I'm kidding, we need you though, right Anna? Yes! Those teachers like to take a break too. So anyway, we'll pass these around and some pencils, and some extra clipboards.
Yeah.
So if you want to fill it out and just answer it now, you can, and then change your answers if you missed any later, that's fine too. Or you can just take a piece of paper off and pass it along. Supporting you in developing the wonder in working with children and teens. So you're here because you'd like to work more closely with children and teens, whether that's subbing or volunteering. And so I won't give you everything you need to know today, but the hope is that we have a level of consistency. For each of you, for your children here, you want to know that the people in the building have some level of consistency. We do this workshop, we videotape this workshop, and we're making sure that's taken, right?
It's taken.
Okay. And we'll share that with you. Did any of you see the Google notes today about the blog information? So there'll be a whole list of resources there. So the orientation workshop's already on there. This video will be up in a couple of days. There was an article that was released today that Hannigan Roseberry wrote, and so that's on there. And then we'll just keep adding resources throughout the year. This is very informal. Please feel free to ask any questions. We want this to be useful to you. So feel free to interrupt me or say, how does this work? Probably isn't the best time to talk about your specific child situation because I don't want to give any personal information with this whole group, but we'll be around afterwards. I'd first like to introduce any staff members that are here tonight. You can go ahead and put it to Denisha. That was our staff picture this year. So, Denisha, you want to introduce yourself first?
Hi guys, I'm Denisha and I am brand new to the early education. I'm the developmental specialist for the 3 to 6 studios. So you'll see me in the hallway all the time if you come down.
Neil's kind of co-presenting this with me from the early ed perspective, as well as any staff members here might chime in throughout the night, or any of you. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Neil. I'm the grade 6 teacher at Quadrilateral Studio.
Hi, I'm Amy. I am a 6 to 9-year-old teacher in the Tucker Studio, and I also have 4 children.
Hey guys, I'm Suji. I'm the teacher at the studio. This is my 3rd year in community.
Shorty?
Hi, my name is Aishwarya, and I'm from Aditya's 9th grade. And nice to meet you.
Shannon?
Hi, I'm Tracy's co-teacher in Sycamore, and this is my first year here.
Kim?
I'm Kim. I'm going on my 11th year. You can find me at the Curb Desk. I'm Katie Keller. There's another Katie. She's in Desert. I am the lead teacher in the Rainforest.
I'm Priscilla Schelling. I teach with Katie Keller in Rainforest, and this is my 4th year.
Kim?
I'm Faith South. I am in Pennsylvania in grade 6.
I'm Amy Adams. I was a parent volunteer and sub for 4 years, and this is my first year teaching 3 to 6 with Faith.
We also have a board member here tonight, Sridhar Chandran. So, hi to him. We have a nonprofit board, and he's one of the volunteers that sits on the board. Okay, go for it, Alicia. To volunteer, to sub, or both, right? So we hope that each family chooses to both sub and volunteer, but that's one of the decisions you're making tonight, how you want to use that. If you choose to volunteer or sub, we encourage you to try to volunteer in those studios in which you want to sub first, just so you can get a little bit more acclimated into the environment first. If you choose only to volunteer, we really encourage you to communicate with the studios what exactly you'd like to do, so they can try to find a good fit for what you want to do and what the needs are of the community. Each studio, some people don't know this, also supports a common space in the environment. So I think, who does this? Sapphire oversees this common space. So one of the things they do is they pop in here a couple times a week and make sure that everything looks beautiful and there wasn't anything left here. So each studio has a common space they support too. And so sometimes parents come in at the end of the day once a week and support some kiddos going to that common space and making it beautiful. Because of our co-teaching model, if you're subbing at the school, you're not running the day, you don't have to plan any lessons, you don't have any of those kind of responsibilities. We really love the co-teaching model because when one teacher's out, the other teacher's there, but they like to have some additional support, and so that's what the sub is. 99% of our subbing is done by parents. How many of you have subbed in the building before? So these guys are the people around you who help you answer more questions. Faith is our sub coordinator, so she's the staff coordinator for subbing. Staff find their own subs, but if they know that they're ill the night before, they'll communicate with Faith, and then Faith communicates with you guys. Sometimes they don't know that they need a sub until the morning of. It's hard, I know, to get a call early in the morning, but it really helps that staff member to feel at ease to know that somebody's supporting the studio with their co-teacher. And so Faith gets in connection with the subs for that studio, so usually there's a list of subs per level or per studio that most people will go by so that they're most used to those children. And so that she helps to coordinate that for the families, or for the staff as well. You want to say anything else about that, Faith?
I'm sure that's okay. If you, under the form coordinator they're signing up for, if you're free most of the time, you're the people I'll probably call in the mornings. If you're free, like with notice, I won't be calling you. If I need someone who is like, wow, yes, I can do it pretty much any time, just give me a call. And I'll get you on my phone, I'll call you bright and early. Just always respond back if you can, that's helpful for me. either yes or a no. I won't quit asking the phone once you say, don't ask me anymore. So always say no if you can't, that's all right.
Really, really helpful. As you can imagine, if staff member's not feeling well and we can't find a sub, we don't force them to come in, but it is sometimes disrupts other people's days and we have to move developmental specialists or other people to that environment. So we really appreciate when you can help out in that way too. Yeah, go ahead. So how to be a super parent as a sub. So the first thing we talked about after attending this, you fill out the questionnaire. We just talked about Faith. There's her email address. Sometimes people call Faith or they call the studio teacher and say, can I just come in and observe or volunteer before I get to sub that first time? Because they want to just know the lay of the land. So either the studio teacher or Faith can kind of help you get connected in that way so that it's not so daunting. Let Kim know at the curb desk if you'll be volunteering your time or getting paid. So if a person that's subbing wants to not get paid for that, just volunteer, which some do, or if they want to get paid, then there's an information packet. You are paid through payroll just as for the IRS guideline. Ask questions and seek understanding. We love questions. We don't tire of questions. It's important to us for us to know what you're thinking. So that's another important part. And learn to observe without impeding the learning process. It's an act that all of the teaching staff, all of us work on consistently. It's not really intuitive for most of us the way we went to school, because oftentimes when most of us were at school, someone was interrupting us saying, what do you know, or turn this paper in, that kind of thing. So in this environment, we really try to hold back a lot and observe before we act. What most subs say is, wow, most of the time they work it out amongst themselves. Obviously, if someone's getting hurt, we're going to step in. If someone's not getting hurt and they're having a disagreement, we first wait. Or if someone's getting really giddy and it's starting to become a problem, we might walk a little closer. And so just trying to really learn that observation skill to not impede the learning that's happening that you may not even be aware of as a part of the environment. How to be a super parent as a volunteer. Same thing with the questionnaire. Think about what you're interested in and how you'd like to engage with learners. So that's really the first step for you, is to think about that. Some people come in every week and read with children. And so there's a certain way that we read in the school, and so they have to get to know you and see if it's a good fit for you to come in and do that. But we have people that read throughout the building. And so that might be the thing that you want to do. And you might say like, well, I just really wanted to come in and help with lunch or help with end of the day or help with the animal cages. Whatever it is that helps you to get connected with children in the building is the way that process works. Yeah?
If we're wanting to volunteer, would it be best to, I would love to volunteer in my daughter's classroom in Trapezoid, but I don't want it to be a distraction. So would it be best to just specify, I want to help out with lunch in Trapezoid and maybe volunteer in another classroom?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a really popular one, especially in early childhood. It all depends on how that child is with you there. And so the first step is just to go ask that teacher, what do you think? Do you think they'll be okay? What about if I come in for a little bit one day and see how they do, and then you can kind of figure out. Oftentimes they might first start putting their names on the list in other early education studios, and then make that the step that they transition to. Agree with that, Faith? Make a plan with the studios you'd like to volunteer and be as consistent as you can with your time so that they know, that they can count on whatever you're volunteering to do so they don't have to change that. Are there any studio coordinators in the room? So, it makes a difference, right? If people say they're going to do something and then they don't. So, we really encourage you to try to not overextend yourself. Just volunteer for what you can actually do and be consistent with.
Yeah.
If you want to help with cleaning, for instance, make sure that you just have a plan ahead of time. If you say, yeah, I came in to volunteer, Kim's going to say, okay, who do you have a plan with? You're like, uh-oh, I just got off work, I didn't think about a plan. It's probably not going to be a good time for you to go back to the studio and try to put the teacher on the spot that last minute. So please try to organize that ahead of time. Check the volunteer boards in the media center. Has anyone seen those? So in the media center next to the copier, there are volunteer sheets, and so some studios will have laminating that needs to be cut or laminated things that need to be laminated. If you haven't had a lesson on that, I think there's a PIP committee for that. that can help you as well. You can always email pip@shinyminds.com and they can help you to get connected in that way. That kind of volunteering doesn't technically need to be on the list for volunteering if you're not here working with children. Yeah, just.
I was just going to say, there's always a PIP committee meeting you have to be in. I know I'm here a lot,
Yeah.
and so are the other ones. You can always, we usually have our name tags on. It says PIP Council. You can stop us and ask us at any time. If we can't answer your question, we'll direct you to Mark or Glenn.
Yeah. So, preparation environment. Who's heard that term before? Anyone want to help define it for us? Go ahead.
Getting it ready for that day's lessons and whatnot.
Yeah.
Regular days, cleaning up, tidying, things really go on.
It's funny, parents that actually volunteer intimately in the studio, they're like, how do they know what's on these shelves? You know, there are so many different things. I mean, you look at just this section of this one studio, and there's like 300 things on those shelves. And each one of those things, if they're not used regularly, get dust on them, or they get out of sorts, you know. One container gets the other container's information, they need to be sorted again. And most of the time that's organized throughout the studio. But you can imagine, later I'll show some early education shelves, and the beginning of the year, at the end of the day, looks very different than the beginning, than the end of the year, beginning of the day. So there's lots of things that we want to make sure that are consistent. So many times they're looking at to make sure that everything is complete, that all the pencils are sharpened. So there is a whole list of things each studio has that each teacher does before the day even starts. And that's not even counting the lessons that they're preparing for. That's just the prepared environment. Because what's really important is you notice in the early childhood environments, the Tower of Cubes, which many are pink, Tower of Cubes, there's not 6 of them in the studio or 25 of them, there's 1 of them. And so there's 1 of them so that each child can learn that process and watch it happen. And so then each one will be able to have all the pieces there. If there are not 10 pieces there, and this spot in that very tiniest one is missing, you'll see the first child that will notice is a 3-year-old that's in the sensitive period of order. And they'll say, it's broken. And that's all they can focus on, maybe the whole day. So it's really, really important. The younger they are, the most important. But even as you get to this end of the building, it's really frustrating when you get something out to do it and it's missing pieces, right? It's like when you put a puzzle together and you're towards the end, you're like, no, it's missing a piece, right? Or even if you're just trying to do a project around the house and you cannot find the hammer, no one put it back in the tool chest. So, you know, all of those pieces are part of the prepared environment. So we do ask if you're subbing to arrive at least 20 minutes before and leave 20 minutes after, because that other teacher in the room now has all of that preparation to do. So there's preparation they do at the beginning of the morning and at the end of the day. And then we ask you to stay that 20 minutes after for the same thing. Yes, the children all help with preparing the environment too, but depending on the level of development, they also need our help as adults to kind of go back through and make sure it's ready for the next day as well. Volunteering to prep the room is also an important part. And so, you know, that might be something like, I only really have 20 minutes a week on Wednesday mornings from 8 to 8:30. And they're like, great, do you want to come in and really look at the language shelf for us and dust the language shelf? That could be what you do. Yeah.
Now, would we want to discuss that directly with the teachers or the coordinator?
Teacher, yeah. What Faith can help you to do is, like, if you're having trouble kind of getting in to volunteer, she can help coordinate that. But most of the time you can just talk to the teacher and say, what is it that you need and what can I do consistently? A lot of times you saw PPCs, you had sign-up sheets in a lot of studios for things that they needed to do. So daily schedule. When you come in to actually sub, you can ask the studio teacher that's there for the folder. And so the folder will be things like the schedule for the day, which isn't set in stone, but it gives you a general idea. For some of you, like to know, when do I get to go have lunch? And so those things are important. It will also give you things like what time that they come to group, what time that they meet afternoon, that kind of thing. When the work time is, how that works in that studio. In the teens program, it's probably the hardest schedule to get to know because it's different every day, and it depends on if they're a seminar day or if it's a math lesson day and so forth. And so, you know, just being in that environment will help you to know that. It will also tell you things like who's doing small group lessons today, what time can you expect for that, how snack works in that studio. And so most of them work similarly, but the things they bring for snack will be different, how much support they need in preparing for snack or keeping it sanitized and clean if the person before didn't keep it beautiful, that kind of thing. Lunch, what the lunch process is. It's a little bit different in each studio. All the studios eat in their rooms, but how they organize lunch, where they microwave and so forth, all could be a little different. So asking those questions. Oftentimes children will say like, can I go to the other studio to go to microwave, because this one's full. And a logical answer to that would be, sure, right? What do you think? How do you think that would work with 600 kiddos in this building? You won't know that, and we know that you don't know that. So we just tell you, you don't even have to worry about making those decisions. Say, I don't actually know what the process is. And sometimes when I'm in the studio, a child will ask me something, I'm like, I don't know what you do in your studio for that. Let's go ask so-and-so and figure that out together. Outside time, we choose to use that phrase instead of recess. Recess gives you the visual of what? Chaos.
There's no learning happening during recess.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, the learning goes out the window. So instead we call it outside time. It doesn't mean that they can't still have fun and play, but we want to encourage them to, learning happens all the time everywhere. If you've ever seen a praying mantis on the back 4 acres, you cannot tell me that was not more important than anything else that may have been happening that day. Job and crew responsibilities. So sometimes, depending on the studio, how they do the responsibilities for the end of the day. That can feel chaotic for someone that's new, whether you're volunteering or subbing. And so just asking how that process works will give you a lot more information as well. And in those adult responsibilities we talked about before, beginning and ending of the day. Do you want to add anything to that too?
My question is, on the daily schedules, I know for our family we have 6 different studios to manage. Is there a way to get the daily schedule from each studio ahead of time to be acclimated to what the environment expectations are for each particular studio? Is that something that
you could surely ask? A daily schedule, the teens program would say, we really don't have, most of them are probably saying, we really don't have a daily schedule. I mean, some children go to math lessons from 8:40 to 9:40. They might have some basics, but it depends on if they're in seminars or not in seminars. Early ed will probably be a very short schedule of the day. Be like work time, lunch. So it's okay to ask, but they may not have exactly what you're looking for at the same time. Does that make sense? Okay. So preparation for success, we talked about arriving early and staying a little bit later. Volunteer options and plans. How the expectations for the age level that you're supporting, it's different. I often tell families, especially if they're subbing, Millie's like, yes, I've been in 3 or 4 different age levels this year.
Morning, and I had to remember because I was using words that were too big and sentences that were too big for them to process, and they were like, what? Underline that.
Yeah. So just the way we talk, and frankly, like in early ed, we watch the way our perfumes are. Really, we've watched that throughout the whole building. Because if you have somebody that is more sensitive to smells, it can throw them off for the whole day. So we watch the way we dress, we watch the clothes that we wear, the shoes if they make a really loud noise. If I'm not able to get down on the floor or back up again, I might want to rethink the clothing I wore that day. So it's a lot of thought that goes into that process. We try to talk just so the person can hear us throughout the building, but that's even probably most important at the early ed at age level. If you walk into an early ed age level and talk like I am, the whole room will freeze. And they may not get back in sync again for another hour or 2.
And the
Do you
teacher
agree?
will you out.
They're what? And we're really careful. We'll talk about this some more when we talk about the communication handouts, but we try not to say good job or that's beautiful, look what you're doing. Because all it takes is one time and the whole environment just like, what about my picture? How does that look to you? And it's just because it's just not a way that we communicate with them, and we try to get them to be more self-regulated and intrinsically motivated than worried if we agree or disagree or think it's good or bad, right? And so we know lots of employers that wish there was more adults like that, right? That can just be satisfied from within. Supporting discipline, inner discipline, and self-regulation. This could be a 22-hour talk just on this conversation. Who's been in my space before and rented a book or borrowed a book from me? Okay. So I've got, I don't know, 100-something books up there that you can rent. Some of the top ones that I recommend, it all depends. People say, which book do you recommend? I'm like, well, what are you trying to do? They're like, I don't know, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you want to know more about the Montessori philosophy? You want to know what Maria Montessori really said? Or you just want like layman terms for that? Do you want to learn how to talk better with your child or be more consistent with discipline? So there's all those different directions, and if you want to email me or talk to me, I could give you some suggestions for that. One of my favorite books is called Conscious Parenting. Who's read that? Dr. Shefali Sabari. She also has, I don't know, hundreds of little snippet videos that I think are really, really powerful. And you can go on there. I think she just makes a lot of sense. She's not a Montessorian per se, but she says all the things that Montessorians believe that I've seen. She's written several books: Conscious Parenting, Out of Control Parent. What's the new one? Does anyone remember the name of it? Awakened Parent, maybe? Awakened Family, thank you. So those are really powerful. A lot of people like Montessori Mad Men. What's the name of it?
Madness and Madness.
What is it? Montessori Madness.
Mad Men would be a completely different.
It was actually written by a few fathers that were so intrigued by their Montessori environment the children were in that they wrote this book to try to help other people know what Montessori was. And so it's a very layman's guide. Discovery of the Child and Secret of Childhood are two very foundational books written by Maria Montessori, mostly for the early education level, but we have a million things in between. And so if you're trying to grow yourself further in either the philosophy or in parenting, we've got lots of books that you can choose from that can help with that too. So mostly, that support of the discipline versus inner discipline is really trying to help children to recognize what an appropriate decision is without us coercing or manipulating them. How many of you were coerced or manipulated when you were younger? So it's not our first language, right? Because I said so. Who said that? I have. And so it's really trying to think about, what am I trying to portray to this young person to help them to be a strong, confident as they grow to an older person, right? And so each time we see a situation, the first thing we try to do is to not have judgment on either person. We try not to make a victim. We try not to make the person that's the bully or that's causing this person to feel like a victim. Can you have a bully if you don't have a victim? It's kind of like how many pages the caterpillar eats, blah, 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 right? So, we have to build up both pieces of that. And so when a child is treating another child unkindly, we're not going to just let it happen, but we're going to pause a little bit. We make it a little closer, listen to the conversation. We ask that, unless you've been here for a long time, you've gotten permission from the studio teachers, that you don't get involved in discipline. But oftentimes, you're in the middle of something. It just happens. There you are. And the first reaction you make as an adult in that environment, it either gives children more trust with you or less trust with you. And so it's really, really important that as soon as you see this thing happen, the first thing out of your mouth might want to be like, that's not very nice. But instead, we encourage you to support inner discipline, and you might say something like, wow, you look really upset. We just validate what we see. We just talk about what we see instead of put judgment on it. It sounds like your voice is getting really loud. Maybe you want to go talk to teacher so-and-so about that. It seems like you have something you want to say about this, but you're not really sure how to say it. Would you like some help with those words? And so if we help to empower this young person to say, I don't like it, you just came over and you said my work was ugly and I worked really hard on it, right? Then this person loses any power they might have. I have never seen a young person, probably seen an adult or two, I've never seen a young person that I thought was not good in their heart or core. I've seen them follow patterns that they've seen or try to find ways to control other people just for environmental survival. And that doesn't mean that they have a horrible home life. That just means they, for whatever reason, felt a reason to control other people so that it makes them feel better about themselves. And so that doesn't mean that that person's not good or not kind. It just means that's where they are right now. And so all of us in this room have the responsibility, and I don't have the video camera, have the responsibility to really support each young person being the best they can be. Like, we don't just throw kids out of the school because they don't follow a certain model, you know, or they don't act a certain way in every decision. Most of us wouldn't have gotten through school if that was the situation, right? Because most of us fell short at some point in time. But we work really hard to try to see the beauty of each person, and we never let them see when we are disappointed or let them feel as if we're disappointed. Okay, I know that goes beyond everything that you were taught when you were younger. And I'm not telling you how to parent your child, but I'm saying in this setting, it's really important that you stay neutral in your looks and your emotions, because that could affect what happens next with that child. It does. It happens all the time. And so somebody new comes into the environment, you aren't very nice to him at all. You go over there and tell him you're sorry. And then that child might be off for the rest of the day, and they're so angry and they can't even understand why. And we don't know. We didn't see what happened. And it seems like it's so simple, but you know what? We don't force children to apologize here. We don't. Now, we do expect a level of respect for everybody, but each person is at a different starting point and ending point. And so when someone's falling short and they've made someone else feel unsafe or unloved or whatever that adjective is, then we want to help them to build trust with that person. But how many of you have heard your child or another child, you said, did you tell them you're sorry? And they go, sorry. Anybody? Okay. So we teach that by asking that for the answer of what happens next. So we really encourage you, when you're in this environment, that you refrain from that, you refrain from any even, you know? Like, that just makes a child, and especially a child that doesn't have good verbal abilities yet, makes them feel bad for themselves, instead of we're trying to help them bring out the best in themselves. Now, that doesn't mean that an adult's not going to have a conversation, that there won't be a restriction or something else that happens depending on the situation. But you know what? We can do that part. And if we do it well, you won't ever know what happened. And guess what? The other child won't know what happened either. And oftentimes they'll come home to you and they'll say, Mom, such and such did this and this, and what happened to the other child? Nothing, they got to do anything they wanted. You're like, what? That's not what happened. You know, but that's probably their perception, which is fair. You know, it's okay for them to feel that way. So you can walk them in the next day. You know, if your own child's in there and you feel like, oh my gosh, that child wasn't kind to my child, I don't know what I'm going to do right now. Go over to the teacher and say, I'm going to walk down the hall just a minute. Can you go watch what's happening over there? Because that's also really difficult. We don't want to ever, I mean, both my children were here since the time they were 2.5 and 5 years old. And I never intervened in any kind of situation that happened to the other person. That was always the teacher's role. Because I didn't ever want that other child to feel like I was bullying them, right? And even if I didn't do it on purpose, and I'm trained to do this part well, but you know, if you're your own child, you feel differently about that. And some of you, that's what you were trying to figure out. Can I be in the room with my child? But you have to figure out, can I do that? Can I remove myself from the situation? When my daughter was 2.5 years old, we could not be in the same room together. She grabbed onto my leg and it was like a magnet. I couldn't get her off of it, right? So I had to, you know, make sure we set a boundary with that. My older child, I taught her for the first 5 years of school. It didn't have a problem. But that was just something each one of us has to figure out. Questions about discipline and interdiscipline? You got it, right? Easy. Yeah.
I just want to say another thing too. Sarcasm isn't something that most age levels get. Like, even with teens, it kind of sets a different tone with them. Like, yes, they can be sarcastic too, but then it just sets this weird tonal pattern with them, especially in the early ed and lower elementary. Sarcasm isn't just something that we do because it's very confusing for kids. So, as somebody who grew up with some pretty sarcastic brothers, that was something that even I had to train out of myself. Because I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't like literally mean for you to do that. Sorry. Like, so that's another thing too. It can be kind of hard to catch, especially when you feel like you want to build a banter, but there are so many other ways of building rapport with kids that are more successful and more developmentally appropriate.
And most of that's just listening. You know, just really listening to what they have to say. You know, tell me about that. You know, you're sitting outside on the playground. There's nothing. There's nothing I love better than to be fascinated by what a young person's communicating about life or about how their family is. Sorry, I won't share any of those stories. Or about, you know, what they feel about their school year. You know, it's fascinating. You know, and that's a way to really build that trust and rapport with the young person. Self-regulation is that other piece. It's hard. It is really hard when you're in the studio, volunteering or subbing, and you see a young person doing something that you know you can show them how to do it quicker and better. And it's in your mind, you're like, are you kidding me? Like, you know, I'll never forget this child's work night, which comes up in October, by the way. And this child was showing their family how to do the tower of cubes. And so they very cautiously and carefully go take the smallest cube, holding it in two hands, and walk over to the rug, place it on the rug. They go back and take the second cube, and this dad's watching. And dad finally goes, well, this is ridiculous. And he starts putting it in his shirt and carrying it over to the rug and putting it down. And of course, the child started screaming. You know, what are you doing? You scratch. Do you see the scratch you made there? Tower of cubes. And so, you know, we have to allow them to regulate themselves. And that doesn't mean 100% of the time, but we try to do it at the highest percentage that's optimum and appropriate for that young person. So, you know, if they're struggling getting their coat on, you can stand next to them, you know, and just be there, you know, and just kind of be watching around where you're not staring at them. And they might give you an opportunity or ask for help, and then you're there